Hello and welcome to Birth Your Vision podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to invite my wonderful guest who is going to be talking all about soulful branding. So in today's episode, I will be talking to Laura, who is an amazing, wonderful creator and director, and she's going to be telling us all about branding. So as you know, there's lots of confusion about branding. And sometimes we often wonder what branding is and how can we actually create a deeper connection with our target audience. And, branding is a way for you to be able to really showcase many of your amazing content and for people to know who you are. So branding is authentically important and it needs to be aligned with your soul's vision and your mission so that you can confidently and wholeheartedly attract your dream clients and grow your business in a way that feels very magnetic. And so today, Laura is going to be telling us all about how to be very good at branding. So Laura is the founder of Inspirate, an innovative branding agency that helps organizations to discover their soul so that they can actually create a meaningful brand identity and a distinctive website that actually sets them apart. Laura has lived and worked in Slovakia, Singapore, and many places, London, diverse in global marketing strategies across a range of industries, including supply chains, in petromedicals and cardiology. And, she's been able to leverage a master's degree in international marketing and global marketing roles. Laura is passionate about helping organizations to be able to create soulful brands, websites, and other digital assets that are backed up with intention and strategies. And so today she's going to be sharing all about how we can actually create a deeper connection with our target audience and how we can actually maintain a strong brand identity. So welcome, the beautiful Laura.
Thank you, Hannah. Great to be here, and I'm really excited to join you on today's podcast to talk about soulful branding. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us today. How was your day and how have you been?
Yeah, I've had a great day, thank you. Just been quite busy, doing lots of work, lots of client projects, but yeah, I'm really happy to be here and join you on this podcast to share my knowledge and experience about branding.
Fantastic. So you are known for the Queen of Branding, and today we're going to be sharing different types of ideas on how to ensure that we are definitely creating the right branding for our business. So the topic is about soulful branding. So many people are quite confused about what branding is. So first and foremost, just tell us, what is branding?
So yeah, there is a lot of misconceptions about branding. A lot of people often think that it's all about the visuals. It's all about a logo, color palette, selection of fonts sometimes, but it's actually it involves these things. It's much more than this besides. So really, branding it's all about, making an experience that you create for someone for your product or service. And it's about setting expectations about what they can expect to receive with your products and services. It's about creating stories and memories so that people feel connected to your business. And it's also about building relationships with people. So these kind of experiences that people have with your brand ultimately will help them to motivate you to purchase from you over your competitors. So that's what branding is really about. It's all about, creating, managing your image in the eye of your customers so they want to buy from you. And really, that's what it involves. But a lot of people think that it's very simple and it's just about the visuals. And just to give you an example of what I'm talking about with this experience is, if you think about the airline industry, so you've got airlines like Ryanair and Emirates. So these airlines provide very different experiences. So if you think about Ryanair, they have this no frills experience. So they have these plastic seats, the cheap uniforms, there's not enough space, often delays, and it's all to deliver on their brand promise that they are a no frills airline. Potentially people essentially just want to get from A to B. But if you see, on the other hand, something like a more luxurious airline like Emirates, so there, if you go on that airline, you have much more space, they're dressed much more elegantly, much more calm atmosphere when you enter the airline. So it's a very, very different experience, and it's creating more of a luxurious experience. That's just an example of like how brand experience, you can create such a different experience with your brand.
Absolutely, indeed. I love what you said. You've given us two examples, Ryanair and Emirates, and the distinct difference between what they do in terms of their branding. And there's a lot to actually learn from each company. So thank you so much for that. Now, talk about soulful branding. What does that term really mean, soulful branding?
So soulful branding, it's all about having a much deeper connection with your branding. So I mentioned earlier how sort of like, people often gravitate towards the visual side of branding, like, your logo, your colours and things. Soulful branding is all about really going deeper, and it's about understanding your purpose, your values, and kind of living those every day. And, obviously as well, when you make choices about your visual identity, about the kind of images you use, the kind of colours you use, you're making informed choices, and you're actually saying, well, I want to use these kind of colours because they represent what my values are and what my purpose is, and it's connected to this deeper understanding about what you want to deliver, and it's connected to the kind of experience you're providing for people. So a soulful branding is essentially a much deeper understanding about your brand. It's not a surface level aesthetic understanding, it's actually understanding and making more purposeful, informed decisions.
Brilliant. So how can you actually create a deeper connection with your target audience, with your branding?
So I think really it essentially starts from really getting to grips with what I call your kind of brand core. So these are understanding your purpose. Why did you create your business in the first place? What was the motivating reason for it? Often it's because, you want to kind of help people, or you want to change the world or society, or, people's lives in some sort of way. And I think that's often a really good starting point to really feed into the other work that you do to build your brand. The other thing that I always like to really think about as well is, your brand values. So, what kind of values represent your company? And this is something, you pick values. You should pick values that you actually, inform your everyday decisions and what you do every day in your brand. So, every day when you're doing your business, when you speak to people on the phone, when you're having a meeting with clients, when you're, sending a social media, all these kind of different elements, what are they saying about you, and make sure they're conveying the right message. So that's what it's all about, really.
Definitely. I mean, what sort of tips would you actually give to people who are just starting their business in terms of choosing the colors for their branding? Because I feel like sometimes choosing the right colors for your branding can be quite difficult and challenging. So what advice would you give?
Yeah, so it is a very, very tricky area, colors. There is a lot of confusion about just actually picking your colors and then how to combine them as well. It's quite a complicated area. I think for me, it actually starts from firstly understanding your brand personality. That for me is a good starting point. So understanding, I talk a lot about humanizing your brand, but what I essentially mean by this is, what kind of personality do you want to be? Do you want to be a fun personality? Do you want to be serious? If you want a more fun personality, you might use like brighter colors to kind of have a more kind of fun feel. If you want a more kind of serious, you probably use more muted colors. So that's just like one kind of thing that would probably be a good starting point for thinking about your colors. And then also think about the kind of mood that you want to create. Do you want to create a calming mood? Does it want to be very energetic? Different colors can have very different moods and kind of, impacts on people.
Definitely. What are your thoughts about my branding? What colors do you see?
So I see lots of kind of very bright pink. I see it as very energetic, very kind of inspirational. Very kind of, inspiring and kind of bold as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I've chosen to go for purples and a touch of pink. These are very vibrant colors, very calming, very royal.
Yeah. I think elegant. Very, very powerful.
Yeah, very, very powerful as well. And these are the kind of colors I've chosen to go for. But sometimes it's very difficult for so many other businesses. But thank you so much for actually breaking that down. And so when it comes to images, so how can we actually use images, right, to be able to
Yeah.
communicate a meaningful message about our brand?
So images. So really, this kind of stems from as well looking at the brand personality. That's where it kind of everything starts. Really, is thinking about like your values, your purpose, and how that translates into your personality. But really, images. Obviously, there's lots of things to think about. But one of the actual things I would say with images is actually thinking about your brand colours. So you want to obviously try and incorporate your brand colours into your images so that you've got kind of this consistent look and feel. The other thing to think about is the kind of style of images. So do you want kind of a more modern kind of image, or is it a more traditional image? You can sort of like, the types of images you use and the kind of style of them, does have a big impact. And there's so many different image styles. Do you also like think about, do you have black and white images, or do you have very highly saturated, very bright images? They create a very different personality. So for me, when you think about images, it also comes back to kind of thinking about your personality and what, aligns with the kind of message that you want to send out. But yeah, you definitely want to think about your style and the message, and make sure you're sending a coherent image. Does your image actually link up with what you're actually saying in the text? If, for example, on your website, if you've got an image and you've got a text, you want the two to kind of be sending out the same message.
Definitely, indeed. So, when it comes to kind of maintaining a very strong brand identity, so how can we maintain a strong brand identity for, over time? Because sometimes some of us, we kind of lose that consistency.
Yeah.
So how can we actually maintain brand identity?
Yeah. So number of different things really, but I think, like you say, sometimes there is this tendency, once you've built a brand, you sort of feel, oh well, I've done that now and it's done. But really, branding is something as I said earlier, it's something you need to apply every day. So every time you communicate with a customer, every time you send out a social media post, every time you send an email or a video or whatever it is, you want to think about what message and what impact you're having, and making sure that your brand identity is coming through in all those different communications. And you also want to think about, how do you want people to feel? As I said, you need to live and apply your brand values, and they're not a set of ideals, they're actually something that you want to be rooted in your everyday behavior. So that's one way. The other way is obviously you want to be consistent with your visual style, have a consistent visual style, have a consistent, messaging, the kind of things you talk about. You want to stand for something, and not kind of like jumping around different topics. You want to stand for something very kind of specific, that people really get to know you and remember you for that particular thing. The other thing is, obviously, branding, it might be one of those things that you actually want to review your brand identity over time, because it might be that your business sort of changes direction, or you have a new product or a new service. You might want to review your branding, and does the kind of messages that you created when you start your business, does it still make sense for your business now? And it might be something you might want to tweak certain things as your business has evolved and sort of adapts.
Absolutely, definitely. So, how can you kind of improve your brand strategy? If you can just give us some tips on how to improve our brand strategy.
Yeah, so I think really with your brand strategy, I think really it starts from actually thinking about the kind of basics of branding. I think a lot of people kind of jump into sort of the visual side of branding. In my experience, when I work with clients, a lot of them kind of jump into, oh yeah, I want to look at colours, I want to look at like the logo and things. But what I really like to start with brand strategy is really thinking about, the basics of what this is about, and essentially really thinking about your purpose, getting to grips with what you stand for, and why you have your business, what you want to serve. Also thinking about having a very clear target market, who you want to connect with, who does your brand, who does it want to resonate with. And also, thinking about, your like I said, your why, and who you want to connect with, and making sure that feeds into your actual branding in terms of what you're actually doing in your brand. So when you're sending out your messages, when you're communicating with people, if you have like an actual clinic or an actual physical building, making sure that that's sending out the same message as well. So I think the brand strategy, it kind of starts from really getting to grips with your purpose, values and vision, and making sure that that feeds into everything that you do in your brand and everything you do in your business, in fact.
Definitely. So how important is it for us to actually just build our brand story? Because here is another thing where people find difficult to really create a very good, authentic brand story. So how important is it for us to be able to build that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, brand stories are so important because, you know, today people, I think ever more, you know, well, actually, this isn't a new thing. This is something like from prehistoric times. Stories are what people connect with. You know, people don't connect with facts and figures. So, you know, you can say all these really impressive facts and figures about your brand, but really it's the stories that people really connect with and really kind of, you know, what makes you memorable. So I think it's really important to have a really authentic story. You know, obviously you want something that people connect with in your story. So it might be that, you know, if you're the business owner, that you've had a very kind of, you know, challenging experience to get to where you come, and you really want to kind of, you know, think about how you can tell that story in a way that it connects with people, and people actually really kind of want to resonate with you and think, I really identify with you, and they want to work with you. So it's all about thinking about how can you kind of connect and tell story in a way that resonates with your target market. Quite often that will be, you know, it could be your personal story, and maybe you've been on a similar journey to what your customers might be on, and they resonate with you in that way. It could be that you're telling stories about your own customers as well, you know, the journeys that they've been on and they can resonate with. There's lots of different ways of telling story, but it is really, really important to really have a solid story.
Fantastic. So how can we actually get the brand to be global? You know, from a branding perspective, right? What can we do to be able to expand to other countries?
Yeah. So I think really the starting point with thinking about sort of, you know, going global is thinking about which specific countries that you are interested in. Obviously, if you want to go global as well, that's what you need to think about. But it might be that actually you're just very specifically interested in, say, you know, if we're in the UK, you might be interested in, you know, expanding to Australia or the United States, English-speaking countries. That is the first question to ask, because that will impact all the other decisions you make. It could be that you want a very global brand as well. But then what you need to think about when you've identified the countries, ensure that there is actually demand in that country for, you know, your product, and maybe do some research about, you know, what the people in that country, you know, what they look like and how they are, because they might be different from the people in the UK. So, you know, think about that. But really what I would say then, once you've worked out there is demand, then think about how much do you need to actually adapt your brand to those different countries. It might be that there's two particular things that you sometimes need to adapt. Number one is obviously language. If you are expanding to another country, language is often the thing that's a bit of a barrier. It could be that you need to translate things into a different language, and then sometimes things get lost in communication.
Yeah.
Even if you're expanding to an English-speaking country, if we're based in the UK and we want to expand to another English-speaking country, sometimes there are different cultures and different you know, phrases that we use in the UK that might be different in other countries. So sometimes we just need to think about a more neutral kind of messaging and these sorts of things, so it actually translates quite well. The other thing is colour. So colour is another thing that is very, you know, culturally, it can change. Meanings of colours can change in different countries. So, you know, if you sort of think about the colour red, it's very energetic, associations like love, danger, you know, in those sorts of senses. But obviously in other countries, you know, they do have different meanings. So definitely research the meanings of colours to make sure that, you know, your branding is sending the right message. And, you know, it might be that you adapt a more, neutral colour. You need to relook at your branding in your home country to kind of see that translates well into other countries.
That is such an important advice there. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to know, what about those who want to actually kind of change their branding into something different, something fresh, something new? They've had the branding logo for a long time and they really just want to revamp. What advice would you actually give them?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say really, what I'd say, if you're thinking of like, you want to revamp your branding, I think probably the best place to start is kind of thinking about where you're at now and where you want to go. So sort of think about, start with actually your business strategy and thinking about that before you actually dive into kind of looking at the actual branding elements. I think sometimes a lot of people want to jump in and kind of like do all the kind of visual, the style things. But what I'd say is start with your business strategy, like your marketing strategy, and make sure you really understand things like, who is my target market? Who do I want to reach? What am I offering and what kind of experience do I want to deliver? And then I would say, then you can start looking at like, looking at like brand personality, looking at things like colours and imagery and things that obviously, deliver on that and actually kind of represent that kind of personality that you would, suits your brand now. Sometimes when people start their business, they create brands and it fits them at that point, but sometimes their business evolves and the brand doesn't really necessarily connect anymore. So it's always good to review things and make sure they are relevant and connecting with your business now.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about your business and the kind of services that you actually offer.
Yeah, so basically, my business is innovative kind of branding agency. We offer branding. So like I said, we're very much focused on the soulful branding. So it's a deeper approach to branding rather than just kind of, obviously it does cover the visual side of branding, like, identifying the logo, identifying color palette, identifying fonts, but it also has a very deeper kind of level as well in terms of, helping people to discover their purpose, their values and their vision to actually create a more powerful brand that has a powerful experience that is more memorable and people really connect with. The other thing that we do is website design. Again, it's very much connected with the branding, really. It's about creating a website with an intention, that really reflects your brand personality and really helps you to stand out from the competition. It's also obviously making it user friendly is a really important thing because obviously you want people to be able to navigate it. So yeah, that's what I do.
Absolutely, definitely. So what sort of stages do you take your client through? So when they come to you, what is the first steps?
So the kind of stages really, it does depend on the project, obviously, depending on what they've done. But a typical stage would be we have a discovery session to really get to understand their brand, their website, depending on the project, like I said, but to really understand who they are, what they represent, who their customers are, and help them work through some of these kind of questions. What are really, really important questions. Like I said, really, obviously, branding and websites, obviously I can help clients through this process, but obviously they need to be involved, and obviously it is their business and they need to kind of, really get to grips and really understand these things. So I really like to involve my clients and make sure that they're on board with what's happening. So the first stage is the discovery stage to really understand in depth about them. Then obviously it's kind of goes on to kind of, planning out, if it's a website, sort of, obviously planning out the pages, the structure, what that's going to look like. Then obviously it goes on to kind of actual creation design stage. So actually creating the designs, what is it going to look like? And then moves on to kind of development in a website sense, and obviously then launching. So that's kind of website. Obviously, for branding is slightly different. It just depends on the project. But essentially, it is a very I like to have a process where clients really get involved with each stage, so they've got plenty of opportunities to give feedback and feel that they're involved in the process.
Fantastic. That sounds really awesome. So how can our listeners get in touch with you, those who are watching and they may actually need branding? So how can they reach you?
Yes, so well, basically they can visit my website, which is inspirati.com. You can visit the contact page. If they prefer to connect with me on social media, I'm on all the different social media platforms. So I'm on LinkedIn, Laura Nicole Brown. You can just search me there, you should be able to find me. You can also find me on Instagram. My business account is Inspirati Studios. Yeah, that's the best way to contact me, or you obviously email laura@inspirati.com.
Fantastic. I've actually left all those amazing contacts in the comment section below. So, what sort of advice would you give any aspiring business startup who wants to kind of work on their branding? What would you suggest for them to do first when it comes to branding?
Yeah, so I think really, the first stage for me really starts from, really understanding why you've actually created this business and what is the purpose of it. There's a great TED talk by Simon Sinek who talks a lot about understanding your why. And I think it's really important to start from that foundation to really get to grips with the reason for creating your brand, because that's what people really resonate with now. People buy into your reason for doing things, and it helps set you against the competition as well. So that's where I would really start, is think about the purpose, think about your target market, who you want to connect with, who is your ideal client, what kind of people do you enjoy working with, and think about these foundational questions really to start your brand. Obviously also really think about, your values. How do you want to work with people, and what kind of experience do you want them to have? So yeah, really think with those kind of questions really to get you started. And that should really, I often find the visual side of things, once you understand that, the visual side of things flow naturally. Like you said, Hannah, with your branding, you probably, identify these colours because you had a real intention about the kind of purpose you wanted to create with these colours. And like you say, I think that's where things kind of flow quite naturally for me.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. You've shared some amazing nuggets here. You've given us, different tips on how we can actually ensure that we are using the branding strategy in a good way. And you've also offered us some tips as well on what to do when it comes to branding, the kind of questions we need to ask ourselves first, which is really, really great. Understanding branding is so important for our business, choosing the right colors. And, your branding has a personality. What is your branding personality? It's about knowing all those things. However, if you are struggling, Laura is here to help you. So all the details on how you can actually reach Laura will be in the comment section below. So just before we round up, any last words of hopes and aspiration for upcoming entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. I would say, really, last words of motivation. I would just say, persevere with whatever you're doing, and really, think about the meaning of why you're doing what you're doing, and really kind of, get to grips with that, because that will motivate you as you go forward. If you have a real clear mission and you have a real clear, vision, what you want to achieve, that will help serve you as you move forward. Because obviously it is difficult starting a business. It is very challenging. But I think if you have a real intention and you know what you want, it will not only help you create a powerful brand, it will also help you create a successful business, because you actually are really motivated and inspired to help people in that way.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better than you. I mean, it's really all about making sure that you're able to birth what you have within you, having the power to be able to execute those wonderful visions and bringing them to life. Everything we need is within us. We just need to be able to bring it out and let that vision live, so that it can actually help other people as well. So Thank you so much, Laura, for coming on to the Birth Your Vision podcast. It's really a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. And to all our amazing guests and viewers, Thanks for joining us. Please sign up to our please join our newsletter so that you can actually be notified of upcoming podcasts, as well as get updates and information as well. And if you are interested in actually starting your own podcast, kindly send me an email so that we can actually have a discovery call, and I'll be able to help and support you and give you more guidance as well. So thank you so much, Laura. What has it been like being on the show?
It's been amazing. Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing, Hannah. Thank you so much for inviting me. And like I said, it's been absolutely amazing to share my insights. And you've been a great interviewer as well. So thank you very much. It's been lovely to join your audience and share my knowledge. So I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's great having you. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.